Hi everybody, I'm Rick Ufford Chase, the mayor of Newport, Vermont, and I'm here for Newport Notes with Rick, where I try and keep you all up to date on what's going on with City Council and the things that we're working on with the staff and the various projects that the city has before it. I want to spend a little bit of time in this session talking about budgeting and some of the changes that we are working on making to make budgeting both more easy to understand and more accessible to folks in the community so that you feel like you actually have a say in what's happening. So traditionally, the city has used something called incremental-based budgeting. And the way that works is you take whatever last year's budget was, you assume that it's mostly pretty standard, and you go up or down or stay the same depending on what you think will happen the following year. And plenty of organizations and plenty of cities across the country, the majority of them actually use incremental budgeting in that way. However, there are some limitations to incremental budgeting. And one of them is that over time, you begin to forget what it was that were the primary underlying suppositions in that budget. Why did you think you needed whatever it is that you're looking at in that line item? And do we still need it today? And those become harder and harder questions to ask the further you get away from the initial budget from which you begin your incremental changes. And so one concern that we've had, and certainly that I've had over the last several months, is how far away most people in Newport are from the day-to-day choices that get made about how to spend taxpayer money. And there's a way to try and resolve that challenge that is particularly apropos in this moment because it's a technique that is often employed by municipalities or businesses when there are financial troubles. It forces you to go back and look more closely at the underlying assumptions in a budget. In some businesses, it's called zero-based budgeting. That's how I first heard about it. Many municipalities call it priority-based budgeting. And the idea here is that the things that are changeable, the things about which we have some concern or some control, are conversations that we put up to the public. And over time, we begin to develop a pattern in which the members of the community can tell us what they think their community should look like and what their priorities are. And slowly, over a period of several years, it becomes easier and easier to live into those priorities that the community members have named for the staff to follow. This year, we would begin normally working on our budget for fiscal year 26-27 about this time. So just keep in mind, most cities in Vermont, maybe all of them for all I know, and certainly Newport is on this list, have a fiscal year that begins on July 1st and ends on June 30th. So our current fiscal year is the fiscal year 2025-2026. And right now, our staff is beginning to think about the budget for fiscal year 26-27, which would begin on July 1st of next year. So this year, as a half step toward priority-based budgeting, we're going to try two things to really kind of shift the way we think about the budgeting work together. The first is that each of the department heads over the next month will be looking at their overall work and thinking about what they hear from members of the community about what is most important to them and doing any adjusting they think is necessary. Things that maybe we could be letting go of, they'll make recommendations about. Areas where they think maybe we should be paying more attention or spending more money or dedicating more staff time, they'll be looking at that question as well. And I don't expect big changes this year, but we will at least begin asking the question about whether or not there are some changes that we recommend to the City Council as they consider the budget they will propose to the community for next year. So that process will begin toward the end of October, where the department heads will be working on that, and I will be meeting with each of those department heads individually to talk about their decisions or their recommendations in their own budget areas. One of the reasons we're not starting for another 2 to 3 weeks is because there's a little bit more work that has to be done to get us ready for budgeting. The first is that I expect probably by tomorrow, or certainly by Monday, we will have an audit that is reliable from our independent auditors, a company called KBS, and they've done our audit for a number of years, and they have worked very quickly with our staff, which has been highly motivated. And I shout out here to Carter Finnegan, council member Carter Finnegan, because she has put a lot of time and energy into the financial affairs of the city in her role as the chair of the finance task force. And she's been deeply involved in the questions around getting ready for the audit as well. So everybody's worked really hard to get this audit done as quickly as possible. We actually have a first draft that came yesterday, and we're looking at a few final issues, and I expect KBS to give us a final draft by Monday or so at the latest. Once we have that final audit, that will show us where we stand on the last fiscal year, which was fiscal year 24-25, that ended on June 30th. Part of the reason that is important is not just because it will give us a reliable indicator of what our numbers were last year, but also because we don't want to tinker with the chart of accounts in our accounting system, the general ledger in our accounting system, until last year's books are closed. But as soon as those books are closed, Chip Stearns, who is our financial consultant from the New England Municipal Resource Center, NEMRIC, has been working with us to begin laying out a far more simple, updated version of the chart of accounts. Anyone who's been paying attention to the budget over the last decade in the city of Newport knows that our chart of accounts is extremely difficult to understand. It's labyrinthian. It's a chart of accounts that was created in 1996, and we've been adding to it, adjusting, leaving things off ever since then for 30 years. So this year, for the first time in 30 years, with Chip's help, we intend to, that is the finance team, intends to take a new recommendation for a far more simplified version of the chart of accounts to the City Council. I hope that we'll be able to do that by October 20th. And if we do, and City Council approves that new simple version of the chart of accounts, then we'll be able to begin the budgeting work with the staff using the new version of the chart right away. One of the things we're most committed to as we do the work on the on the chart of accounts, is to make it easy to understand what's being spent on salaries in each area. So instead of having to search for one person's salary across 2 or 3 or even 4 or 5 different departments or areas in departments, we will make the salary lines easy to understand so that anyone in the community can figure out what's going on and who's being paid and how much they're being paid and what's being done with the energy, the work that they're doing. So all of that gets us back to the budgeting process. So the last week or 2 of October and the first week of November, the department heads will be working on their first run at the budget for 26-27. We intend to put a completed first draft of the budget in front of the mayor and council and in front of the community, hopefully by the second meeting in November. And we expect that we'll spend the next month following that with both the council and members of the community having an opportunity to ask questions and to make any recommendations or share their thoughts about the decisions that have been made. But the second thing that we're changing this year to move us toward a more community-engaged budgeting process is, and I'd like you to mark your calendars for this now, we will be holding a special town meeting for information purposes on Saturday, the 10th of January this coming year. It will be much like a town meeting that happens in early March in many of the villages around the area that we don't really experience here in Newport anymore because of our adopting the Australian ballot to engage as many people as possible in the decisions that need to be made. But one of the things we've given up, in my judgment, with the Australian ballot is a sense that the community has a chance to be with one another and to engage the budgeting process in a meaningful way, instead of just voting it up or down on the advice of council. So on January 10th, probably from roughly 10 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon, we will be holding a town meeting day, and I hope that we'll see 100, 150, even 200 people turn out to be a part of a conversation about the choices that we're making in this year's budget. And there will still be time for changes to be made if we hear an overwhelming groundswell of opinion about particular items that following week. So I've asked the department heads to plan on being in town the week of the 12th of January for budget week. We'll make any final adjustments at that point for the budget that will finally go to the council for its approval, or any final adjustments the council would like to make. the second meeting in January. And that will allow us then to recommend, the council will then have a budget that they are recommending for the voters to approve or to disapprove on the 3rd of March at the regular Australian ballot town meeting that Newport typically holds. So that's a lot to absorb, and it really does mark a shift and a new direction for how we want to manage budgeting, because this isn't a one-off. We don't do priority-based budgeting for a year and then step back. If we're effective, we will get better and better at it and have more opportunities for public engagement every year thereafter. For instance, it's the finance team's reflection that we may actually be able to build toward another special town meeting day late in the spring, probably late April or mid-May. And the goal in that meeting would be to come together for a kind of blue sky dreaming and conversation about what we want this city to look like 3 years or 5 years down the road. And as a result, what are the budget priorities that our staff should be thinking about as they craft their budgets for the following year, which would then be, of course, 27, 28. So that means that the voters, the residents in Newport, will have an opportunity to come to that meeting and share their own thoughts and ideas. And we'll take those thoughts and ideas and work on them next summer, through the summer, to come up with a first draft of a budget, which hopefully will be presented to the City Council by the fall, mid-fall to late fall of 2026. And then that budget will then go through the normal council and community comment period. And then hopefully we'll have our second January meeting of a town meeting for informational purposes again. So you can see we're beginning to line out the opportunities for the public to regularly engage in what we're planning for this community going forward, so that you all can be a part of the community conversation. One last thing I want to say about the public. We work hard actually during the city council meetings to refer not to the public, but to community residents and voters. But it's also true that we have many stakeholders who aren't residents in Newport. They own businesses here, they shop here, they come here for social events. Many of them live in the northern part of the NEK and the many different villages and towns that surround us. And we're working hard to begin to create opportunities for those folks to also express their opinions, because if we're successful, Newport's downtown will become the downtown for the entire NEK, the way it's been in the past. If you go back 50 or 60 years and you look at the way Newport functioned in those years, we dream that Newport will become that center, that hub of activity for the entire community. And not just the city of Newport and the commercial area that Newport and Derby share, but also the downtown area, that it will become a place that's really inviting. And to that end, this is the last thing that I'll end with today, Carrie Schultz, our new finance and office administrator in the city, has begun work this week reaching out to the various towns and villages that surround Newport to ask for permission or an invitation for me to go as mayor and visit with different select boards throughout the region in the northern NEK. So if you get one of those phone calls as a select board member, please know that I'm not coming with an agenda other than to introduce myself, and if there are questions, to update folks in your community about our plans in Newport and to hear about your concerns in your village, because we want to be partners to all of the surrounding villages in this incredible, remarkable community here. That's it for this week. I expect to be back a week from now to give a report on the council meeting that will take place this coming Monday. One of the things that we'll be dealing with at that meeting will be final approval for the water tower loan that we've been working on for several months. We hope to make final decisions about that and arrange that loan on Tuesday. And to that end, one last thing I should have mentioned at the beginning. The new water tower is up and running. As of Friday, we flipped the switch and we severed the agreement with the village of Derby, who has provided water for us for many years. And Newport is now providing water to the residents and the industrial park and the businesses on the east side. And that's coming from the brand new water tank up behind the tavern on the hill across from Walmart. So that's it for this week. I look forward to talking with you again soon. Thanks so much.